Illuminate Community Builder by Illuminati is an online community platform that has a modular build and pricing model, making it easy to tailor to specific needs and budgets. Each module allows different functionality, such as group management, including mentoring and support networks, LinkedIn integrated profiles, or event marketing. And you can choose which combination works best for you based on your specific community needs. Unlike other options on the market, Illuminate Community Builder features a unique page builder system using a comprehensive asset library. This allows you to modify all aspects of the design and content, offering virtually unlimited flexibility, making sure the platform can grow with your evolving needs. As an administrator, you have access to a suite of tools with which you can oversee the management of your community, run reports, analyze data, and gain a deeper understanding of user needs so you can optimize your community engagement.
So yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Alistair McMillan. I am the Communications and Events Manager here at Illuminati. We have a very interesting webinar today. Before we continue, I would just like to go through a very small amount of housekeeping with you all now. Firstly, please feel free to use the chat box on the right-hand side of the screen. Let us know who you are, where you're from, what you do. Also, let us know what brought you here today and what you hope to come away with from today's event. Secondly, if you have any questions for Jay or Johanna, please do feel free to add them in the Q&A box on the right. You can upvote your favorite questions and we will endeavor to get them answered for you during this presentation. Thirdly, I would like to ask you to take 5 minutes at the end of this webinar to visit and follow our LinkedIn page. You will find lots of interesting information and relevant content, not just from us, but from things we find across the internet that we think you might find interesting and relevant. Finally, before we begin, our next Creating Connection webinar will be on the 20th of October, and we invite you to join Dr. Maria Gallo to consider how you can reposition your alumni engagement work to involve alumni directly to yield success. Drawing on the work from her newly published book, The Alumni Way, Maria navigates the session to answer this question. What would engagement look like if alumni were true partners in the process? This event is, of course, free, and you will find more information and registration details in the link in the chat, which I will post a bit later. We will also send you a follow-up email with all the links mentioned in today's event. So, back to today's event. I would now like to hand over to Johanna. Johanna is the Strategic Engagement Consultant here at Illuminati, and who has over 12 years of experience in alumni relations and advancement in the US, the UK, and the Czech Republic, where she's currently located. Johanna, welcome.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction, Alistair. And again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending where you're logging in from. I couldn't be more excited to be here with you today. Not only as I had a bit of a break recently, as I just had my second baby, who is 12 weeks old today. So celebrating that, but also because of the fantastic Roux Dillon, who is with us today to discuss the newest trends in global alumni relations programs and strategies amidst all the changes that we've kind of experienced over the past year and a half, and that's brought on to us. So just before we start, I would just like to introduce Jay just a little bit. I'm sure a lot of you know him, but for those who don't, Jay is a globally recognized leader in alumni relations and advancement. Jay also holds a doctorate in organizational leadership from USF and 2 degrees in music from UCLA, and he's a social scientist by training. He's currently the executive director of alumni relations at UC Berkeley, and he was previously the director of alumni engagement at the University of San Francisco, as well as the executive director of alumni strategic initiatives at UCLA. Jay has served on the faculty of 8 institutes for CASE, and his research and publications focus on alumni identity, something that we'll unpick in our webinar today as well, which is a new approach to measuring engagement and predicting philanthropy through the lens of social psychology and data science. Something that actually I'm really interested to unpick and hear more about. So Jay, so it's so exciting to have you with us today. And, I should say this has been years in the making. As Jay and I have known each other actually for quite a long time, and we've kind of followed each other's careers. We began working together at UCLA, I don't know how many years ago now, but it's been some time. And that's kind of how we've met. And we've kind of gone on in our different kind of careers within alumni engagement and advancement. And it's been fantastic to be able to reconnect and to be able to kind of do this webinar together for everyone. So again, huge welcome, Jay. Hello to you to sunny California.
Hi, Joanna. And I'm so happy to be with you as well. This is case in point for that saying that it's a small world. There you are in the Czech Republic. Here I am in Berkeley, California. And yet we both got our start in a little old building at UCLA called the James West Alumni Center. And Joanna, I don't know if you recognize what's over my shoulder here. It's the JAM from the beginning of the old mid-century modern circular desk in the James West Alumni Center. And when I left UCLA in 2012, it's something I grabbed out the door as we were redoing the building. Nice. So it really is a pleasure to be with you. And I want to get very quickly to our topic today to talk about the do's, don'ts, and what ifs of digital forward alumni engagement. But before I do that, I just wanted to point out that this webinar is about creating connections. And I hope that you and I, the attendees and participants today, can also create a connection. And I've placed my email address and my personal mobile into the chat. And I do invite you to connect. And I really mean that. WhatsApp is great as well, same phone number. So as we get started today, I'd like to invite us to do a little exercise. So what I need you to do is I need you to find a piece of blank paper. Any old paper will do. A piece of blank paper and a pen. And in about 10 seconds, I'm going to ask you what I think is one of the more fascinating questions of our alumni relations business. And that is, what are the unwritten promises of your college degree? And as Alistair mentioned in the next conversation following this one with my very good friend and fellow social scientist, Maria Gallo, her wonderful book, The Alumni Way, is the first piece of real solid research that I've seen that is basically a self-help book for alumni about how to leverage your alumni network. And if you open up the book at the very top, the very first review is from me. So I'm very proud of that. Okay, so let's get started. So you've got your piece of paper. I want you to place it down in front of you. Get your pen. And I invite you to look at this piece of paper and imagine that it is your college diploma. And if you have several alma maters or perhaps a high school that you're connected to, that's fine as well. Look down at this paper and imagine it is your diploma. And for the next 60 seconds, which will go by quickly, I'd like you to think about what are the unwritten promises that your alma mater made to you when they handed you this diploma. And just take the next 60 seconds to write some of those things down on this blank piece of paper. So here's the question again. What are some of the unwritten promises that were made to you by your alma mater at the point that you earned your degree? So let's do that now. Okay, we've got about 30 seconds left. Keep writing those promises that were made to you when you graduated. And in a second, I'm going to invite you to share some of these in the chat. And I'd like us together to determine, what are some of the commonalities of what we have written down? Because we have folks here on the webinar from all over the world and all different kinds of college experiences. Okay, pencils down, everyone. Congratulations, you've passed. I hope that was an intriguing exercise for you. So just in the chat, if you could, and don't be shy, type in a word or two or a phrase or something that you wrote down on your blank piece of paper here, your diploma. What unwritten promise do you feel that your alma mater made to you at the point of graduation? So let's get this chat popping, everybody. So lifelong relationships. Thank you, Maria. Jacob says relevant and useful skills. Well, we hope so, don't we? Okay, some other things. Keep them coming in. And I see some other good friends of mine here. Welcome, Scott. Melissa, it's nice to see you and folks from Rochester too. So other things, career help, employability, career help again, 2 votes for that. Community and belonging.
No promises.
No promises. Yeah, well, we don't want to know, but we might ask where you earned your degree.
I'll get to that one.
Opportunity to support future generations of students to stay in touch. Engaging with me for something other than money. Rebecca, that's great. Let's get a few more. A network. Thank you, Scott. Okay. So we have a few themes that have come through. Contact, right? An open door. Yes. So we here are in the business of advancement, of alumni engagement, of alumni relations, of creating relationships with former students, now alumni. So there's some themes that we feel are promises that our own alma maters made to us at the point of graduation. So we've got career assistance, some networking, some theme around employability or skills or the promise of a job, maybe to go that far, an open door, and a lifelong relationship or lifelong learning. So let's pause for a minute and let's recognize what we did not write down. And I don't think any of us wrote down, well, our university or college promised to ask us for money for the rest of our life. But boy, isn't that the thing that our industry seems to lead with? And let's spend a moment reflecting together on that. And Joanna, I don't know what your experience has been as your career has developed in alumni relations, but more often than not, I hear alumni first and foremost say, the only time I hear from my college or university is when they ask me for money. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my vision for our conversation today is to invite us to think about changing that narrative. And wouldn't it be great if using these promises that we've written down here, our own personal feelings and what we know to be true for us and the themes that we uncovered together, using that information, wouldn't it be great if 5 or 10 years from now, all we hear from alumni is, gosh, the only thing Berkeley does is reach out when they want to help me. And boy, is it annoying. So let's together make this session today about digital forward engagement, about changing the narrative, about looking at the promises that our colleges and universities make to our alumni, those that are unwritten on the degree. And let's find ourselves together 5 or 10 years from now in a space where all alumni can do is complain about how much we try to help them. So thanks everyone for doing that bit of an exercise with me. You're welcome to borrow it with your teams. It works especially well with boards as well, with alumni boards who, as you know, and let's just be honest, everyone who's on an alumni board has some sort of sacred cow, some sort of thing that they believe all 100,000 rest of the alumni deeply care about. This is a great exercise to help reframe that conversation. So thank you everybody for doing that. And Joanna, back to you and our planned program for today.
Yeah, definitely agree. I love this exercise, Jim. I definitely have to borrow this for the future. It's so simple, but so effective. And I think it's a great kind of starter in getting us kind of thinking along the kind of right lines, you know, and it's great to see you kind of being a pioneer in this space and trying to have us think differently about these things kind of going forward. So now kind of looking at the conversation again about what this topic for today is, and looking kind of, you know, the do's, don'ts, and what ifs of digital forward alumni engagement. Jay, I think I would like to ask you, you know, since, you know, we've been in this kind of new way of working, or, you know, what COVID has brought onto us, but what do you think are some of the alumni relations strategies that kind of you think you can keep from these last 12 months or so?
Well, first and foremost, I think we as an industry need to recognize how much alumni relations has meant in the context of fundraising over the last year and a half. And I happen to believe that our particular slice of advancement was much more agile and much more ready for this immediate shift to remote work and remote engagement than perhaps some of our fundraising colleagues who are normally engaged in in-person fundraising asks. So I think just to take a moment to celebrate all of you and everything that we did as a business in alumni engagement, to try and reframe the way we connect with alumni and to do that quickly, I think we were pretty good at it. And these last 18 months have been a time for us to shine. So that said, there are things to learn as well. And I think one of the frustrations that I had prior to this pandemic was trying to convince folks that personal engagement did not have to be in person. And I think this is a particularly difficult argument to make in the context of working with faculty and staff who, in normal circumstances, come to a campus every day to work in their department about the topic that they deeply care about, with students who are terribly interested in it as well. And it's hard to imagine that you can have a personal relationship that is not in person. Well, fast forward to today, now 18 months later, and I don't think I'm having to make that argument anymore. I think we've all experienced in both our professional and personal spaces that virtual or digital forward engagement works. And of course, it doesn't supplant or make up for everything that is joyful about meeting someone in person. In fact, one of my very first hire at Berkeley in the Office of Alumni Relations is on the webinar here today, Susie. And we were just realizing that we're going to meet each other in person for the very first time after a year at Berkeley's homecoming this weekend. So there's nothing that can take the place of a hug, certainly, but there are digital and virtual ways for us to put our arms around alumni and help them feel like they are part of a greater whole. And it doesn't have to be an event, and it doesn't have to be a reunion. It doesn't have to be a in-person volunteer opportunity. So if we can keep that going, Ioana, I believe that's the number one lesson for us to take into these next few years as we emerge into a different normal, that personal engagement does not have to be in person. And if we run into folks who really would challenge that we use the data we have to demonstrate how successful we've been over this last year and a half in helping alumni stay connected to their alma mater and to one another.
Yeah. I mean, would you be happy to share maybe what, you and your team have done, what has been kind of successful over the past, year and a half or so, where you've seen a lot of engagement from alumni or alumni that have, maybe lost touch and reconnected with you? Have you seen any of those trends, or, maybe what have you done maybe differently during that time that, you think could be another way forward as well?
One of the things that we did at Berkeley, which I imagine many of you did as well, was immediately pivot to doing virtual events. And I think some of us took our normal in-person activities and just threw them up in a webinar or on a Zoom. But we also were creative, and we created spaces to share the university's expertise with the alumni and greater community, especially as it related to things having to do with the pandemic. My colleagues here in public affairs started a great series called Critical Conversations, or Berkeley Conversations, and where we leveraged the faculty expertise here on the campus to bring some deep insight to questions that were really causing people a lot of anxiety around the pandemic. And lo and behold, out of the woodwork, we had tens of thousands of alumni, many of whom had never opened an email, many of whom for whom we didn't even have their email address, attend these events. And so it became an entirely new way for alumni to raise their hand as being interested in something that their alma mater had to offer. And I think this is one of the real lessons for us here, folks. For too long, we ourselves as an institution have narrowly defined the paths along which alumni can connect back with their alma mater. An in-person event or reunion, an athletic gathering, a club or a chapter, a volunteer opportunity. These narrowly defined verticals that by their nature were at the very bottom of an otherwise large funnel. So if we can pivot to try and put alumni at the center of what we do and become alumni centric in the way that our fundraising colleagues have talked about being more donor centric, I think things like these Berkeley conversations become incredibly attractive to alums who have otherwise never found their way down the funnel and into one of these predefined verticals. So I'm sure you have done some of this as well. What I would say is that it's very important that we have mechanisms in place to track alumni participation in this way. It's great to put up content, but folks, if we don't know who the alumni are who are participating, where they are, and what they're doing, there's actually very little value in saying that 1,000 people watched our webinar. We need to know who those people are, where they are, and what they're interested in. The same way a retail brand endeavors to know you very well as a customer, we need to adopt some of that in the digital space as well.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. I'm sure we could have so many more, questions and topics on, how to do that, what are the best ways of doing it. But let's save those for now, and maybe let's look at kind of the flip side of that. So, what do you think, again, kind of going through your experience as you have, and maybe what you've seen, some other, universities, other shops do, what are some of the kind of strategies that you think maybe we shouldn't kind of think about, or, maybe things we should throw away almost as we approach this new, so-called normal? And, what will all that look like? What do you think, you'll be doing differently perhaps? And, maybe you could encourage others to do as well.
Well, one of my favorite sayings in this business, Joanna, is that part of our job as alumni relations professionals is to learn how to lose and lose early. And in the business literature, this is called failing fast. And so many of you may be familiar with that concept, but it's the idea that we try things in a way that allow us to determine whether or not they were successful quickly. And I think that's something that higher education is woefully bad at outside of the classroom. So let me talk about what I mean by learning to lose and lose early. So here we are, homecoming is just a few weeks away here at Berkeley. And we have designed what we had hoped would be a hugely attractive proposition, which is to invite alumni back to campus for a class reunion. And reunion attendance has been waning, I think, industry-wide over the course of the last 5 or 7 years. But I think, myself included, many of our colleagues as well, we were expecting a real bump in return to in-person events. And I'm very curious, you can check me on this in the chat, please. If you have had the chance to do in-person large-scale events like you did before the pandemic, have more or fewer people shown up than you had expected? Because for us here at Berkeley, what we're seeing is that the attraction of an in-person class reunion maybe has shifted over the last year and a half. So I'm very curious, folks here, if you have done an in-person event or are planning in-person reunion activities this fall, have you seen an increase or decline in in-person attendance? So Melissa, yeah, first one is this weekend for you too. And more RSVPs in the past at Augsburg University. So we shall see, but I think one of the things we have to be willing to throw away is the idea that alumni need their alma mater to help them gather together in person. I just don't think that's true anymore. Whether it's around class year or it's around where they live, there's just in our digital age where it is so easy for you and I to find an old classmate or find an alum who is in a similar business, or move to a new town and try and find fellow Bruins. I went to UCLA as Joanna did. You know, if I move to Prague, I know who to look up if I want to find other Bruins in the Czech Republic. So, you know, that need just isn't there anymore. And so if we could lose that, I think it would open up a huge new avenue for us to consider programs and volunteer activities that really bring alumni closer to their alma mater. So what do I want to throw away? I want to throw away the idea that alumni need us to help them connect. Because if we're honest, folks, they just don't.
Then it begs the question, how do you, make sure they can have, I guess if you're talking about, communities or networks, I don't know if that's what you were kind of hinting at, but, how do you keep those kind of sustainable over the long time? And, how do you kind of facilitate that discussion? Or do you think it kind of happens naturally given by, I know part of, your kind of concept is alumni identity versus, alumni affinity, but, how does that play into that? How do you think, that can be sustained over the long term?
I think there's a lot of value to creating community. So perhaps I was a little too sharp in my comments just then. I just want to make the point that for those of us who are engaged in this alumni relations work, perhaps we wake up every day thinking about alumni, thinking about how we can connect with them. I think there are very few alumni that wake up every day thinking about their alma mater. So let's just recognize that that's a disconnect. And so we have to create value outside of relying on someone's nostalgia or feelings of connection for their alma mater. So I think there's a tremendous amount that we can do to create community among alumni. I'm just saying they don't really need us to do that. Mm-hmm. So, my take on this, as you mentioned, is the concept of alumni identity. And this is an area where I've done a great deal of research, both as a graduate student, but then also as a consultant and as a professional in this space. It's the concept that a part of who someone is related to their alma mater, where they went to school. So I'll just back up for a minute and invite you to go back to your Psychology 101 class, perhaps in college. And you may have heard about this social psychology theory called role identity. And it's the idea that you and I, who we are today, we are made up of the different roles that we occupy. So as a husband, father, friend, a churchgoer, basketball player, golfer, volunteer, somebody who is a teacher, whatever these top 5 or 6 roles are that you have in your life are said to make up your role identity. So the concept of alumni identity is to take that role as an alumnus or an alumna or an alumx of a college or university and invite us to think about how that makes up a small part of who someone is post-graduation. And this used to be, I think, a uniquely American idea. I don't think we expect to go to Paris, for example, and see, alumni of the Sorbonne riding around on their Vespa with a Sorbonne sticker on the back. That's just not part of the culture. But here in the States, it's very much a part of the American culture to associate oneself with their alma mater, whether it's wearing the big, UCLA sweatshirt on the weekend, or putting a Johns Hopkins license plate frame on your car. So I've been interested in this concept of alumni identity and how can we quantify how much of a graduate's self identity is related back to their alma mater. And if we could target that the way Nike figures out and targets exactly who the cross-country runners are to try and sell them cross-country shoes, then we would be much better equipped to go out and try to engage alumni with their alma mater. So this is one of the personal interests for me. And if it's something that sounds intriguing to you, I'm going to drop into the chat a link where in about 2 minutes, you can test your own alumni identity with your alma mater. And at the end of this little questionnaire, the methodology will try to predict two things. It will try to predict how connected you are to your alma mater, and it will also try to predict exactly how much you donated to your alma mater in the last 12 months. So I'll drop that in a second, and feel free to check that out either during our conversation here or after the webinar. But whether it's through the lens of alumni identity or using other mechanisms to identify ideal alumni supporters, I think that's where digital forward alumni engagement is headed. I think that's one of our do's. We've got to be more diligent about figuring out who our alumni are, where they are, what they're doing. And my offer into that space is this concept of alumni identity.
I have to say, I know a little bit of what you've done with that, Jane, and I do love kind of this concept of putting that label on it, the alumni identity versus, I think what we've kind of talked about in this sector is, the whole affinity concept. And, I think it's a bit outdated, especially I think if you look at Europe, for example, where, as you rightly mentioned, given the example of Paris and Sorbonne University, but, those kind of affinities don't work as well here. And, something like alumni identity is something that works actually really well. And that, you can almost look through almost as like a customer lens, which I think is something kind of you're hinting at. We should be looking at alumni more as, customers. And of course, it's something that I always say to my clients is, look, we're out there in the business competing for people's time just as anyone else is, trying to grab their attention through social media, through whatever we do, the events we put on. But we're right there with everyone else. Just because they've gone to, yes, we do have that, one leg up because they've gone to university, hopefully had a great time. There'll be those who didn't. But, I think that's something that we have to be super conscious about. It's like, well, how do we actually create that? How do we do that? And I think that concept that you mentioned about alumni identity is so great and it works so well. So I would definitely also encourage everyone to take a look at, kind of do it yourself. I've done it. It's great. And kind of, have a look because, I think it's something that could be, used forward as well. So,
and let me know, if you do have a chance to test this questionnaire, let me know if it was accurate or not. I'm very curious about that. Joanna, I just want to pick up on something you said, which is this word affinity that has been around our business for a long time. And I want to invite our participants here to think about that word in the context of social psychology for a moment. And again, not to try to give everyone a quick rundown on what you probably or may not recall from school, but there's this idea that we as human beings love to affiliate with things. We love to be part of larger groups. That's why, we have football hooligans in England. We love that. We love to have identity with organizations, whether it's a football team or a social cause or an alma mater. But I think this word affinity is a bit misleading because things like affinity or pride or loyalty are certainly feelings that we have, but there are feelings that are also easily lost. So you can lose your pride in something. You can lose your affinity for a sports team. You can perhaps even lose your loyalty to a friend or a particular brand, switch from Nike shoes to Adidas or something. But identity is far deeper than that. And in the literature on social psychology, this concept of identity is so well rooted in understanding who we are as human beings. That is why I think is an opportunity for us as community builders and relationship builders to try and focus on something that really doesn't change over time. If somebody would say to you, as you would be asked in this questionnaire I shared, that a part of who you are is where you went to school, you're not going to lose that. It's not going to go away. So I have a problem with this word affinity, Joanna. I really do, because affinity is something that you can gain and lose pretty easily, but your identity is not something that operates in the same way.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think it's about kind of shifting that discussion and trying to get away from, the language we've been so used to hearing and, all of that. So I think it's a kind of fresh new approach, and I really do love it. So I'm on board. So thinking about kind of now, kind of the what ifs. So, I think kind of the biggest question I think, that I have for you, and maybe, even ask you, what do you think kind of are the kind of biggest questions you have in terms of kind of what, what the future of alumni relations holds? I know this has been, kind of talk for the past maybe a year or so, thinking, what does the future hold? What does the new normal look like? But what are some of the biggest questions? And I guess, what do you see being some of the ways, we can kind of move forward from this, and what have we learned, and, what does that future look like? Big
Well,
question.
I have one big question on my mind, one big what if, and so I'll focus on that. And I'm curious to see if this resonates with our audience here, or if there are other what ifs that are bigger in your mind. What if college education becomes permanently hybrid going forward? So imagine that for a moment this pandemic had not happened, and in higher education we were seeing a little bit more openness to online degree programs, but really I think folks were turning their noses up at those things, at least here in the States. Even if it was an online program from a great school, the online experience was regarded as less than. So what if college education is hybrid permanently going forward? Here at Berkeley, we're now offering all classes of 200 students or more exclusively online, so that all those massive courses like that Psychology 101 course I keep bringing you back to, there wouldn't be an in-person option. It would only be available online. And we're hearing from faculty that that's better. We're hearing from graduate students who are teaching assistants in these courses that it gives them better access to students. We're hearing from students that it gives them a chance to be on equal ground. So not to be sitting in the back of a 400-person auditorium, but to be in a discussion section for a large survey course where their voice is equal to that as anybody else in the room, because everybody's Zoom window is the same size. So what will be the alumni experience that we have to plan for and plan ahead towards in the next decade and in the decades after that, if the major donors of today are not going to look anything like the major donors of tomorrow? Meaning those alumni who we will count on for philanthropic support in 2040 might be those alumni for whom the college experience as a hybrid was the norm. So folks, what if? I think there's a high chance that that's going to happen, certainly in our little corner of the world here in California. So what if? We should be planning for that. What does that mean? We will have students for whom the college experience wasn't necessarily about being in the dorms, about being in a large classroom. It would be about a very personalized experience that was in part in person and in part online. And so what does that mean as we try to engage those alumni in the future? Will they all want to come back for a football tailgate? Maybe not. So that's my big what if. And I'm very curious if that resonates with other people as well.
I think that's, very big question, of course. I guess we'll see what the future holds with that. I mean, I know, like we already referenced, kind of, looking at kind of the identities and seeing, because I guess if the approach will be much more personalized, then, what do we do as, alumni relations shops, and how can we adapt to that space? Maybe, I know we discussed before, would it be better served if we invested kind of in strategies to help us understand who the alumni are? Question is, I guess, how does that look like? How do we do that? How can we ensure that, everyone else can see that's really important for us, because they think, we already understand alumni, we know who they are, but there has been a change. So, I mean, do you have any kind of recommendations for that for anyone who's, maybe even smaller shops where you don't have as many people, in the arsenal who could be doing this type of work? Or what does that look like? I guess, I don't know, from what you've seen, or if there's any tips you could give.
Well, I think as we return to this, well, as our chancellor here at Berkeley refers to it, a different normal that's ahead to us. It's not necessarily going to be new. It's just going to be different.
Mm.
As we plan for and return to a different normal in our work, I think a lot of us are looking at our existing strategic plans or partnerships and starting to revisit those. And I think probably something that is missing from your plan, or maybe buried in your plan, but should be a higher priority, is data integration. So I keep coming back to this phrase that we have to understand who our alumni are, where they are, and what they're doing. And the reality is that the systems that we use in our business, the databases that we rely upon, are very good at painting for us a picture of who alumni were at the point of graduation. We know their major, we know where they lived, their phone number and email back then. We know where they grew up, perhaps. We know their GPA, what student clubs they were involved in. Were they an athlete? Did they sing in the choir? It's a beautifully accurate and non-pixelated picture of who a graduate was at the point of graduation. But from that point on, our databases and systems, generally speaking, across our industry, are not well equipped for us to input and integrate data on who alumni are today, where they are, and what they're doing. So I think the number one thing that we have to do in this different normal is become data collaborators writ large. We have to be the folks going across, reaching across campus to partner with folks at the level of data integration. And that means gathering as much information as we can from internal sources, but also external sources, by standing up online spaces where alumni can engage with their alma mater, and we can begin to collect that engagement and those behaviors as a way of painting a much more accurate picture of who alumni are today. But as one of my colleagues here at Berkeley is fond of saying, that collaboration happens at the data layer. And you can have a strategic plan about how everyone's going to partner, and we're going to work together. We're going to meet every other month. But until your data and that of the Career Center, for instance, is automated and integrated to the point that it would outlast your tenure at your institution, then that strategy has not been realized. So even if you are a small shop of one or two people, or a large, well-established alumni association or alumni relations department, if you could set aside some time, and I mean really focus on this idea of data integration, I think we will be set up not just for the future, but for whatever weird pandemic type thing might happen again. At least we'll know ourselves better, we'll know our alumni better, and we will be more well equipped to respond to new ways to connect with people. I think that's a bit of a weakness that we all sort of knew we had, but was only amplified here over the last year and a half. So go out there, and I hereby deputize everyone on this call as a data collaborator, and go out and do good.
Yeah, no, I really like that, and I have to say I do agree. Always, what I say is, let's go back to basics. Like let's really figure out, who alumni are, what motivates them, what makes them tick, and really kind of dig deep down. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about this concept of building alumni, online communities, because those can be so data rich, and you can really get a lot of information out of that. And, that can then change, your strategy for, how you're going to be engaging your, recent graduates, more established alumni, donors, etc. So I do really like this. And I would also then encourage everyone to do this and have a kind of good look at what that is, because it can seem as a very daunting thing, because you go, we might have, 200,000 alumni, 70,000 alumni, I don't know how many, but it doesn't have to be as a daunting of a concept as it might seem at first. So there's definitely tools out there, that you can use as well. So to kind of help navigate smaller shops, etc. And you can jump ahead, and something I've been saying kind of, in Europe is you can, kind of skip some of the steps maybe that someone, some of the bigger universities in the US might have taken, and, kind of get started with some of these newer kind of technologies or whatever else is out there to kind of get that data and kind of get that knowledge. So so definitely agree. I think we have some questions that we've gotten also in the Q&A, Jay. So maybe let's look at those while we still have a little bit of time. There was a question from Steve from Durham, and hello, Steve. Nice to see you here. He says he's okay with the idea that alumni can connect without the university arranging it, but when applied to those who stay in touch with earlier contacts. So can those who have lost touch over the years reestablish connections without help? What's your take on that, Jay? What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a really insightful question. Steve, thank you. So can alumni who have not been connected reestablish the connection without help? I'd like to answer your question in the context of something that is terribly important here in the States and has been on my mind and that of our colleagues across the country now for the better part of a year. And that is, how do we create a space that is actually welcoming to all alumni if they do find their way back on their own? And I think for far too long, especially for alumni of color, alumni from other minoritized communities, LGBTQ alumni, first generation alumni, these programs that we've had to welcome alumni back to campus were never really created with them in mind. And so for too long, we've been asking alumni, I think, to find their own way back. And I would like to change that. One of my missions in this business is to bring equity and social justice to education through the work of philanthropy. And I believe that philanthropy is the lever that will accomplish that in higher ed. So for alumni who have not felt connected, I do think there is an enormous role for the university to play or the college to play in saying you are welcome here. And I think that's mostly a marketing and communications exercise to, again, try and change that narrative that the alma mater is really not a place where everyone belongs, where only some alumni belong, to a place that is aggressively touting its role as being a home for all graduates. Because that's what alma mater means. It means our mother. And so I just think our institutions have not been mothering when it comes to all alumni communities, especially those that have been historically marginalized here in the United States. So I do think there is a large role for the university, mostly a marketing communications one, to try and convey an interest in changing that narrative. A great question, Steve. Thank you.
Thanks for that. We have another one from Morgan from University of St. Thomas. So as wealth continues to concentrate on one end of society and alumni small donations continue to decrease, how can we continue to advocate for alumni engagement without relying on donations as the reason to continue to engage alumni?
That is a great question. I'm so glad that you asked that, Morgan. Here in the US, perhaps the best thing that alumni of a public institution like Berkeley can do is to advocate for the institution at the state level. What we've seen here in the United States, and is starting to become true across Europe and some of Asia as well, is a divestment of government in public higher education. And so at that point, the role of alumni as advocates becomes incredibly important. And I have personally seen and witnessed how little it really takes for a small group of alumni to change the mind of an elected or appointed official when it comes to some legislation, law, or statute that would really impact the university in a significant way. So if we are in a space here in the US where alumni participation in giving, the average across all 4,000 four-year colleges in the US was about 20% of alumni giving back year over year That was in 1990. In 2014, that had been halved to about 9.5%. So it is very true that alumni participation in giving is on the decline. However, we can put another thing on the horizon other than a dollar sign, and that is advocacy. And I think at public institutions especially, but to a degree at private institutions and community as well, it's very important that one of our goals be to engage alumni in advocacy on the part of the institution. And if not for increased state support, it can also be advocacy in the admissions process, or it can be advocacy for students as they graduate and welcoming them into internships and their first entry-level positions in the workplace. So another fantastic question. Thank you, Morgan.
Yeah, and I do have to say I agree with that point. I mean, in the UK, and in Europe, there's less of that divide between a public versus private university, but there's just still, like you say, a big focus on alumni advocacy and alumni sitting on different kind of boards across the university, across different institutions. I think that's very, very important. And I think more and more, I think universities are also paying attention to that. So maybe if this is something maybe you haven't explored or, you don't have at your institution, it's something I would definitely recommend looking into. It's a great way for, alumni engagement without kind of the focus on those dollar signs, pound signs, whatever, currency. But yeah, so definitely worth exploring that as well. Great. I don't know. I mean, there's been lots of great discussion also I see happening in the chat. Emma kind of put in a question about, being curious to hear from everyone in the room to biggest challenges they've experienced with return to different normal. So please, do share. I think everyone has shared also their contact information, which is fantastic. We do have a couple of minutes left, so I would just like to invite Jay with any kind of, last comments or anything you want to leave us with, any final thoughts, anything that you think would be, beneficial for us as we kind of think about this, different, new normal, whatever everyone else calls it, what does the future hold, I guess? What does it look like? What can we do as, alumni engagement professionals in the space? And how can we be maybe more brave in what we're wanting to kind of put forward? I think this is a great time, for us to kind of take a pause and see what we can do differently, given what the circumstances have been. So what can be some of those things? Give us a little bit of that cake, Jay.
Well, I don't know if you should take advice from a redhead or not, but I'm here to offer it. I want to just recognize, as I did at the beginning of this conversation, what tremendous pressure we have all been under in these last 18 months. And I'm certain that from time to time, you, as I have really questioned the validity and value of our work. And I want to tell you that it is valid and it is valuable. And as we return to a new, different space, I believe that we have a lot to offer. And if we can make this the year of alumni relations, that would make me so happy. If this can be the year where our campus colleagues, for the first time or for the first time in a long time, begin to value our work as indispensable in the context of higher education, I think we will be well equipped for the future. I mentioned this concept just in passing, but this idea of becoming alumni centric. I think campuses over this last 18 months have moved a great deal towards becoming student centric as well. And just thinking about everything that we did at Berkeley to try to make the student experience as best as it could be in the challenges that we all faced. So let's make the future about being alumni centric. There are no better advocates for your institution. There are no better supporters. Certainly, there are no better critics either. But don't forget that it's our job to make a welcoming space for everybody. So my parting words to you are to say thank you for what you do, that what you do is valid and valuable. And let's together try to change this narrative. And maybe we can have a conversation 5 or 10 years from now where we really are complaining about how connected alumni are to the campus and how we just can't deal with it. Wouldn't that be fun? So Thank you, everybody, for the conversation today. I really enjoyed it. It's an opportunity for me to create connections, as this webinar suggested in its title, and I do hope to create those connections individually with you. Please don't hesitate to reach out and connect on LinkedIn or hit me up on WhatsApp. But it's been a real pleasure, and Ioana, it's a joy to see you again. And I do hope the chance we have to travel internationally, and with your new additions to your family and my new additions arriving in January, we certainly are looking forward to getting back to Europe. So my best to you as well, and thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jay. Thank you for giving us your time today. It's been great kind of hearing from you about the work you've done. I know there's so much more behind, the concepts you were mentioning. So please, I do encourage everyone to look at the resources that have been shared about more on alumni identity, as well as some of the other kind of concepts we've explored. As you know, our next event's in October as well, so do make sure to register for that. And again, a huge thank you to Jay for giving us his time today and exploring this. It's been such a great talk, and I'm sorry we haven't had more time, and there's so much more to do. But I've loved hearing from you, Jay. And it's been great to kind of reconnect. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a lovely day, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and we hope to see you again next time. Thank you so much.
Ciao.
See you. Bye.